everyone to the third of our Hot Topics webinar series. This evening we have Brad Fountain joining us to talk about bridging literacy and digital media. So Brad, I'll let you introduce yourself and we can go ahead and get started.
Great. Yeah, if you don't mind passing me the ball, that'll be great.
Absolutely.
Just right-click on me and I'll be good to go. So hope everyone's doing all right tonight. Thanks everyone for joining us, and I apologize again for being a few minutes behind schedule. I'm traveling all day today, and I'm actually using a Panera internet connection to get me connected, so bear with me on that. So I hope everyone's doing well, and hope you had a good day today in the classrooms. I'm going to probably do the best thing for all of us is if I do a desktop share, so I'll do that here in a minute. If for some reason while I'm doing that, if there is a no, somehow it disconnected me. Hang on.
No problem. And while Brad's trying to figure that out, I just wanted to check and see, Jean, if you are able to hear now. If you can type in the chat and let us know.
Okay, sorry about that. Somehow I lost connection on the cell phone.
No
anyway,
problem.
if I can, all righty, great. So yeah, I'm going to do my desktop share. Like I said, if you have any difficulties or if you lag behind at all when I'm showing my screen, just let me know, and I'll be glad to slow down so that the screen catches up with you. Just to kind of give you a little background where I'm coming from, I am the Director of Instructional Implementation for the Discovery Education and Science textbook, and prior to that I was a classroom teacher in North Carolina for about 7 years, where the accent comes from, so don't pick on me too hard. And I was a school administrator, assistant principal's principal for about 5 years, all in North Carolina. My wife is a current classroom teacher, has been teaching for about 18 years. Reminds me every day what it's like to be a classroom teacher. And I'm also experiencing life as a parent of a school-age child, as I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. If anyone needs a 4-year-old, just let me know and I'll send you my 4-year-old your direction. Anyway, other than that, we should be in good shape. And we're going to talk today a little bit about bridging literacy and digital media as a whole. So, like I said, what I'm going to do first is share my desktop. So the chat window that you see right now, and feel free to use that throughout the presentation, but it's going to disappear briefly from you. When I share my desktop, you should see toward the top of your screen a little menu that opens up where it says you're viewing Brad's desktop, something along those lines. And if you point at that or click on that tab when you see it at the top of your screen, once I share my desktop, you can click on the chat icon, which looks like a speech bubble or a cartoon talking bubble, and that should let you see the chat window. So we'll make sure people are always finding that all right. So let me share my desktop. All righty. And I'll open up the chat window on my end just to make sure. Let me know if you're finding the chat window okay. Again, it should be at the top of your screen. Should be a little tab at this as you're sharing. Are you viewing Brad's desktop? And then you can get the chat window. If someone doesn't mind, let me know that you've got the chat window open. That'll be great. Great. Wonderful. All right. So I am going to let Jenny kind of handle the chat window, because once I go into PowerPoint mode, I don't get access to the chat window quite as easily, although it's opening up right now. Maybe it's Keynote that doesn't like it. Anyway, we'll be all right.
I got you covered, Brad.
Thanks, Jenny. I appreciate it. Actually, I do see it, so I'm doing okay. So I'll try to monitor as I go.
Okay. I'll ping you if you missed anything.
All righty. I appreciate it. So, you know, the big thing, a lot of us, anybody out there hearing anything like maybe talking at all in your district about Common Core? I mean, just throwing it out there in case anyone's ever heard of that concept before. Of course, everyone's hearing about it all the time. So this is a great topic for us to talk about literacy and digital media, because it is everywhere. Obviously, everyone talks about it. Some places aren't actually recognizing it. They're doing their own thing. But it's all still the same idea. And it's really not, if you look at it in detail, it's not a big difference from what a lot of us learned about teaching in general. It's just kind of bringing a bigger focus into it and making sure that we're aware that we've got to make this literacy connection through everything that we're doing, and really focusing a lot heavier on this nonfiction text as well. So we'll talk about some of those details as we go through. All righty. So one of the things to be aware of is, you know, I have to bring up to folks is, you know, if you look at how things have changed since the 1960s or even before that with education, the biggest change you'll notice, if you look at the graphic on the screen right now, you know, your amount of instructional time, let's go a little light blue box, hasn't really changed since the 1960s. Kind of been stagnant, stayed the same. You know, whether you're teaching 6, 7 hours a day, depending on how many hours you've got in your school day, that is your typical instructional time, and hasn't changed in decades. What has changed is the amount of content you've got to cover at any point in time. So that's grown exponentially, and it continues to grow. We've got more and more information to cover, yet they're not giving us any more time to cover that information. So if we're not doing things to bridge this literacy into other subject areas, there's no way we can cover all the content that we need to cover at any point in time. We've also got greater diversity in the classrooms than ever before. You know, maybe, you know, you've got some students in your classroom who are ELL. You know, it's always an option that some people have. I had them all the time. But you may have kids, you know, with IEPs, 504 plans, a variety of challenges that may need to be met. Maybe just on a whim you have a kid in your classroom somewhere one of the years you've been teaching that's below grade level in reading. You know, more and more kids than ever before have different challenges, and we've got to find ways to meet their needs. And, you know, connecting that literacy into other areas other than just that standard reading literacy, that literacy component we all kind of grew up with, really helps us out. Now, when I was a student in school, and it's changed as I got an adult, but I wasn't a big reader. I didn't read just for fun. It wasn't something I did. And I ran around and rolled on the ground and burned holes on my knees as a kid all the time, because I was always running around and playing football and baseball outside and everything else. I wasn't a big reader. But as an adult, because I got the strategies and the skills to read, and I developed a great love of reading. And we want to help make sure our students have those skills. We also want to find ways to meet their interests as we go along. And again, that's kind of one of the reasons Common Core is having its focus is helping teachers understand that kids have different areas of interest, and the more we can engage them with reading in a variety of subjects is going to help us out. We're also kind of past that point of these quick fix solutions. Now, when I was in school, started teaching in North Carolina, one of the big areas of focus for us was putting a computer in every classroom. The more computers we put in every classroom, they thought the better we would do. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but when we did that in our schools, most of the computers made really fancy paperweights. People were never trained on how to use them. And so they just sat there. No one knew what to do, how to use them effectively. And because we never trained anyone on what to do with them, and we didn't have great resources to use with those computers. It was a rare individual who found unique ways to use them in the classroom. And again, this is back in the early 90s. For me, I'm getting older every single day. It's just amazing. But anyway, so we're kind of past that point. And we also want to make sure our students have the skills that they need to move forward. I love this little cartoon. Anytime you have Calvin, I get a kick out of it. But, you know, this is almost me in high school. It was, you know, anything I could do just to get information out there and just kind of, you know, cover my bases is all I wanted to do at times, because I didn't have teachers who were really pushing me at times to make sure I backed up and supported my information. So Common Core, you know, if you're not familiar with it overall, there's a lot of things to be aware of with Common Core, but we're going to kind of focus in around some specific areas. We're going to be talking a little bit about, you know, reading literacy. Anytime I can put a shameless plug on my own kids, I do that on my presentations. That's my little girl. We're talking about written literacy when we talk about Common Core. We're talking about speaking and listening literacy. And we're also talking about informational literacy. So I don't know if anyone saw this back in December, but, you know, John Bon Jovi on the internet was declared dead at 49 on December 19th, 2011. And if most of my students would have said this when they saw that on the internet. It's got to be true. I read it on the internet. And we want students to understand that not everything they see on YouTube, not everything they read on the internet is accurate. And just like everything they read in a newspaper article or periodical is going to be accurate, they need to find out ways to validate the sources of information they have, and it's a critical skill to have. I love John Bon Jovi's way of handling it. He just put a Twitter picture up that heaven looks a lot like New Jersey and dated it and timed it 6 minutes after he was declared dead, which I thought was a perfect reply. So the big shifts that we're talking about literacy in the Common Core is, a bigger focus on nonfiction and authentic text, higher level of text complexity, focus on command of the content from the text, and increased academic vocabulary as well. We also, one of the other reasons to talk about and help, one of the things we want to do with, within Discovery is, and one of the things we think Common Core will help a little bit with is helping teachers to organize all this information. So if I asked anybody out there in whatever grade level you teach, maybe you're a third grade teacher, if they find any information on plants and units on plants in third grade and you did a Google search, you'd find a wealth of information, millions and millions of results if you did a search on Google. It takes days, weeks to sort out all that information and find out what's valid and what's invalid. Well, students are the same way. Whenever they're looking for information out there, it takes a long time to pull that information together and figure out what's useful and what's not useful information. That's a skill set our students need to understand is how can I take all that information and validate the information as we go along. And we also firmly believe, and this is one of the things I stand by with everything, is it's not what the computer is going to do and what our students can do with or what we tell our students to do with the computer. It's what the students do on their own or what we do as the teachers with the computer. It's going to make a big difference for us. So hopefully when I finish this whole presentation, we'll lift a little bit of the fog. That first picture I showed earlier and picture of the Golden Gate and the fog, and hopefully we'll lighten up the area a little bit and give you a little better understanding of how you can connect literacy and digital media. So one of the things that we'll talk about is, some of the things that I guess a lot of us do already, and these are not new strategies for anybody. Some of the stuff I'll show today is not necessarily new to everybody. Hopefully you'll find something maybe you haven't thought of or seen before. But the first thing that most of us are used to doing on a day-to-day basis are some of these pre-reading strategies, where it's reading titles and subtitles, studying photos and captions, looking for bold or italicized words, reading the first and last sentence of each paragraph. Those are things that we've done a lot with our students in the past. We're going to try to move beyond those when we're talking about ways to connect literacy with our digital content, but just, keeping those fresh in our mind. One of my favorite strategies is this. And so what I'm going to do is ask each of you, and I'll ask one person in a minute here to do the next part of the activity. But if you will, just take a minute and read through this reading passage here, and we'll give you 2 or 3 minutes just to read through it, because we're going to just show you an idea you can take. Whether you're using a reading passage like what we have here or an article from Wikipedia or wherever it is, you can do the same activity we're going to do in just a second. So go ahead and take just a minute or two and read this article here. And if someone will put in the chat window when you're finished, that'll let me know. All righty, one person's finished. See if we get a second person finished, in case Jessica is our speed reader. Perfect. Okay, so we got a couple of people done. So Jessica, since you were bold enough to say that you've been through the whole thing, we're going to give you a little opportunity to share with us a little bit. Great. A lot of people are getting done now, so this is great. If we take any kind of reading passage, one of the things we can do, and now if you've got an interactive whiteboard, this activity works even better, but for our purposes, we're just going to do it without the interactive whiteboard. All right. So what I've done is I've taken 10 key bits of information, 10 key ideas from that reading passage. And what the activity I have my students do is, okay, look at those 10 ideas. And now to scaffold this for my younger students, if I'm a K1-2 teacher, instead of sentences, I might pull some just 1 or 2 words and put them in by each number versus an entire sentence. At the older grade levels, maybe 5th, 6th, 7th, all the way through high school, I'd have them actually create their own list. But for middle of the range, 3rd, 4th grade level, this is what I like to do with students. So there's 10 sentences here that are pulled directly from, and 1 out of the 8 are the same. I did notice that as well. Thank you for that, Harvey. I got to edit that. But anyway, so what I'd like for Jessica to do, if she doesn't mind, is look through these 10 sentences, which are actually 9 because there's 1 as a duplicate, and tell me which 5 best summarize that reading passage. So take just a minute, Jessica, and pick out 5 and just list them in the chat window when you have a second. And there is no big pressure. I'm not going to quiz you on this and have you, what I'd normally do is have students actually rationalize why they chose the 5 they chose. You can do this as a small group activity as well as opposed to an individual activity, then have groups ready to discuss and share which their 5 are. And the first part of this rationale while Jessica is working on this, okay, she's got her 5. She's got 2, 5, 7, and 9. So what I would do on a smart board or interactive whiteboard is I'd mark off the others, put a line right through them. So I've narrowed out the 1. So 2, 5, 6, 7, 9. And I would mark those off saying those are not ones that we're going to be talking about because these are the ones we think are the most focused. So what I'm doing right now is having my students work on the scale of not just looking at how to summarize information, but also going through the idea of what are the important details versus what's the interesting details. Because a lot of times students will get hung up on, this is a really interesting fact. Let me look at the ones Jessica pulled out here. She pulled 2, she pulled 5, 6, 7, and 9. So the students may, see number 10. It takes Venus 243 days or about 8 months to rotate once. It's pretty interesting. Not really that important for this whole article. And so while they may think that's important, just because it's interesting doesn't mean it necessarily is. Now, if you do this activity with the whole class, again, what I would do is have a group. And students do it in small group, have a discussion around that at 3rd, 4th, 5th grade level. Have them discuss what their 5 are. So the next part of the activity is once I've marked these off on my interactive whiteboard, if I've got access to one of those, and again, you could write them on your dry erase board if you wanted to. The next thing I would do is I would say, okay, Jessica, from here, from those 5, narrow it down to 3. So then what we're doing is having a really drill down is what are the key final details that really summarizes our reading passage. And Jessica, you don't have to worry about doing that right now. But I just take it to the next level. And again, the K2 level, we're looking at maybe words or a couple little words or just a short 3 or 4 word statement around it instead of having a whole full sentence out there for our students to focus in on. So it's kind of a basic activity. Another way to do that, though, is we can also have our students take that same bits of information, those same 10 sentences. We don't want to do that activity. We could have them break down and say, okay, which ones of those, which numbers of those, if I have them if I have this list of sentences on the screen, have them on their own paper, put down, okay, which numbers are interesting facts? Which ones are important facts? And narrowing down the interesting versus important, because that's a key strategy, again, for them to be aware of. What are the interesting things? What are the important details? And I get 5 positive points for finding that. Oh, I'm not sure who got Mr. Miracle. Okay. So another thing that, we've all probably done these kind of KWL activities. And the KWLs we're not going to spend much time on, but there's some other things that you could do with the KWL. And one of the things I like to modify off of KWLs, not just what do I know and what do I want to learn and what have I learned, but also, what am I willing to share with somebody else? So what other details are out there? Or how does, another area you could add in is how does it connect it to something else? So you can add a C into it. What connections can you make for another activity? But again, KWLs, a lot of us have already done. So let's take it to another little different angle. One of my other favorite strategies is called an anticipation guide. I don't know how many people maybe have done an anticipation guide, but the idea behind it is for students to look at the title, maybe get the images of a text. Again, we can look back at this text here and just look at basically the title and real brief scanning over it. And what they're going to do, and this doesn't match what the anticipation guide here is, but what I want them to do is before they read the text, put a check mark under their name on anything that they agree with, all right? So the fastest way from the Caribbean to Pacific was by plane. Do I agree with that, yes or no? The geographic conditions help making the building of the Panama Canal easier. Do I agree with that or not? Then they go through and read the text and see which ones are validated or supported through the text so that they start to understand, okay, I may have a preconceived notion about an idea that may or may not be correct, and how can I validate that the correctness or incorrectness of my preconceived notion based on what I'm reading. So they're finding that supporting evidence to support their thoughts or to disprove their thoughts. Another fun one, and again, an easy one to do with an interactive whiteboard if you have it. However, I've done this with a just simple Word document. And I'll mention a way to convert any PDF to a Word document in a minute, but it's a simple CLOZE activity. So one of the things you could do is you could have your students prepare for, doing a CLOZE activity around this individual reading passage. And before we get into the CLOZE activity, we're going to have them at least get the background information they want to be aware of. And so if you're doing, science or resources or, whatever concept you're studying, if it's science, if it's social studies, give them a variety of tools to get the basic background information that you want them to understand. And so this is Junie. No sound. Okay, some people can still hear. We'll wait and see.
It sounds like some lost sound, so I just want to stop and check for a second to make sure
those
that lost sound.
All right, some people are coming back in. All righty, those who lost it, anyone back yet? I think Talanya had lost it. Okay, so it looks like we're back. Had a little glitch, sorry.
No problem. That's how it goes with technology sometimes.
Vanessa, still no sound.
Okay.
All righty. So let's do this for a second. We'll wait for just a second. Let me see if it connects back in for Mary and for Vanessa. So Vanessa or Mary, let's see if the sound comes back to you for just a second. The organizers are not necessarily part of it. It's just things that I've created on our own. Yep, let us know if you can hear again, Mary or Wendy. Don't want to lose anybody if we can avoid it. It does happen periodically. Yeah, I've had that happen too. The copy of the PowerPoint, we'll be happy to share that. Let's see.
We will be archiving the webinar and putting it up to our YouTube channel. And then I don't know, Brad, if you wanted to actually share the PowerPoint or maybe send it out as a PDF. Or...
And if you want to link to it, so if you want to upload it to MediaShare and let people link to it, that they can have it. It's not a problem.
Okay, great.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the desktop share. See, Wendy's got share sound back. See if Julie comes back. Julie's back. Okay, there we go. All right. So sorry about that, folks. So what I was talking about a minute ago is you can use a variety of resources to pull in and get your background information for your students. Now, this happens to be a exploration from Discovery Education Science Textbook Service. Skill Builder to fill in the background information, whatever it happens to be, whether they're reviewing glossary terms, anything to provide that background information for our students, even hands-on activities, because what we want to do is build the knowledge of our students. And the CLOZE activity, for me, is a nice way to do a quick formative assessment on what my students know or don't know really quickly and easily in the classroom. And so what you do is you take your reading passage and you simply put black or white boxes. And Jenny, who knows SMART material better than anybody that I know, can tell Jenny, wouldn't you say it's pretty easy to draw a box around a Word document or a PDF document on a smart board?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's just draw a simple box, and you have the ability to reveal, remove those boxes or clear them out at any point in time. But what you can do is have those, just draw a box around specific words, and have your students fill in. Okay, if you leave it out there long enough, a process called blank will take place when you're talking about water. Hopefully our students will understand the evaporation is the word we're looking for there. So you've got a variety of ways for our students to just fill in the information. And what I was going to mention a minute ago, if you have a PDF document and you don't have a smart board and you want to do this with a regular PDF document, you can't draw on a PDF document. So I'm going to show you one of my favorite websites in the entire world, and it's free. Let me pull up my, there we go. Not the Discovery Education Textbook, that's my very favorite. This is my next favorite. All right, so the website is this, and I'll put it in the chat window. And my catch-all for everything, and I'll talk about what this site does. So here's the website. It's called Online Convert, and it'll let you convert any document. So right here in the middle is Online Converter. If you have a PDF document, you want to convert it to a Word document, it'll convert it for you. If you have a video that is in a different format and you want it converted to MOV, it'll convert it for you. If you have an MP3 file you want converted to a WAV file, it'll do it for you. So it'll convert any format to any format. Really a handy tool to have in your little tool belt. As a teacher, again, free, and you can download the finished version when you're ready. So I'll put that up there just to help you out. And the wet link is right there in the chat window, all right? So that's how I convert PDF documents. That's how I was able to draw on this PDF document, was I just converted it to Word, and then in Word drew some boxes around it. Another one of my favorites is...
Sorry, Brad, can I budge in for
please.
just a second? I was just going to say, for those of you that do have an interactive whiteboard, just being able to capture these files, whether it's a Word document or PDF, capture it into your interactive whiteboard software. So whether it's Promethean flip chart or Smart Notebook, then it allows you within the toolbar of that software to just easily create the boxes and to get really interactive with it. So
yeah, thank you. That's great to help out, because I don't know interactive whiteboards nearly as well as Jenny does. So another great little strategy I like is the GIST. GIST stands for Generating Interaction Between Schemata and Text. There will not be a quiz at the end. Don't worry about it. Just call it a GIST. Now, there's a couple ways to do this, and I'm going to scaffold this for my younger learners and for my older learners. If I'm working with K, maybe even through beginning of third grade, I would use a template that you see on the screen right now. And what that is, you know, I want my students to summarize whatever we're talking about. Now, it doesn't have to be a reading passage. They can summarize a video. They can summarize an activity that they're doing, a variety of things that you can do. But what we first have is spell out the 5 W's and an H, so the who, what, when, where, why, and how. And then at the younger elementary primary range, what I'd have them do is write a 20-word gist. So the idea is summarize what we've done or the key things that we've learned in 20 words. All they've got to do is use words. They don't have to use full sentences in this case. Again, for my younger learners, well, I don't need to worry about them writing a whole sentence yet. For my older learners, I would use this format for my GIST strategy. And the way this one works is this. And again, we're still focusing on filtering out important versus interesting details. For the top half, so that top box is to summarize. They fill up that box to summarize what we've learned at this point in time about whether it's the water cycle or about you know, the Boston Tea Party, if you're studying social studies, or maybe if you're doing you know, literacy, what we've learned about Othello from Shakespeare, whatever it happens to be. You fill out your top half of the page, and they summarize what they've learned. Then they take what they've written in that top half, and on the bottom left, you'll see a smaller box. It's about half the size of the top box. They've got to rewrite their summary in that smaller box, filtering out just what's important enough to fill up that box, making sure they leave out things that aren't necessarily vital to their summary. They then take what's in that box and they move to the right, and that next box is about the eighth of the page, and they rewrite their summary there in probably about 2 or 3 sentences. All they're going to be able to fit there, maybe 4. Then the last part is they go to that last box, the one that's not blacked out, the one right above that, and they've got really room for 1, maybe 2 sentences to summarize what they've learned. And so what that helps them do is really filter down and be able to express what they've learned in short, concise points. So they're really focusing in on only the key details of what they understand. And again, great little formative assessment, because I now know how well my students understand the concept. Can they really filter out the key details out there? Another great little strategy we've all done is probably compare and contrast. So whether it's, and this video is not working right now, so talking about, you know, different things that happen at different points. So the battle to Guilford Courthouse. So what was the standpoint from the Loyalists? What was the standpoint from the Patriots? What things did they have in similarity about what, you know, the original argument about is how the battle went, or whatever it is. And so you can do a simple Venn diagram to do that compare and contrast, because we want our students to have that skill as well. Now, another one is one of my favorites, is the exit ticket. And I like this, especially for science classes, but even for social studies classes as well, just about any classroom. But an exit ticket, because what it does, lets me see it as my students are leaving a classroom for a class period, especially at the middle school level. They're going to come in, do the lesson for, you know, maybe an hour to an hour and a half, depending on your schedule, and then they leave. They go to another classroom, and I need to feedback really quickly on how well my students understand the concept. Having them do an exit ticket really helps kind of nail this down. But I try to focus in so I get a little greater depth into their answer. So discuss one way today's lesson could be used in a real world. So making them apply somewhere else versus just giving me a summary of what happened. And if they do this in like if you're using a science journal or any kind of journaling component, they simply put their page out as they're walking out the door for that day. At my elementary level, just have them put at the corner of their desk, whether it's on a piece of paper, in their notebook, whatever it happens to be, while they're transitioning from one assignment to the next, you can set it out. I'm not going to read them all. I'm going to spot check. We all know our kids. We know which kids I need to really focus in on to make sure the information was conveyed appropriately. And so I'm going to spot check those students as they're either leaving the classroom or as I'm walking through the classroom. Am I going to let my students know I'm not reading them all? No, because obviously we know what will happen then. But I'm going to give the impression that I'm reading them all as they go through. So another one that you could use is, we'll describe one topic that we covered today that we'd like to learn more about. Maybe that's going to get them to start thinking about, oh, I want to find out more about this at home, and they'll take, God forbid, maybe 10 minutes at home at night to actually learn something else about what we studied today. Worst case scenario. One of the two strategies we learned today, which did you find the most useful and why is another kind of idea. You'll find tons of ways to use that. And again, if they just put it in their science journal or any kind of journaling you do, some of those just simple $1 notebooks you can get at Walmart or Kmart or anywhere else, just lets me check it out as they go through and leave the classroom today. Another thing that I like to have my students do is, because we spend a lot of time at the literacy area focusing on a fact versus opinion, which really isn't any difference versus observation and inference. And so when we talk about literacy, and our students are used to going through, okay, what's the fact and opinion, whether it's in, tying it to strict literacy, but what can we actually observe and what can we infer versus it? Because that brings in a little bit of a science connection, a little bit of science tilt, but also gives it a different feel. We're not just doing fact versus opinion. What can we validate and what can we not validate, but we can infer based off of it? Because there's a lot of things we can infer, but in order to infer it correctly, we've got to have supporting information. And having them understand that we've got to be able to provide that supporting information in there as well. So that you can do a fact, inference, and opinion quiz sheet or things like that, and there's tons of these out on the internet if you do a search for them. So when they're reading a reading passage, watching a video, when they're going in and doing an activity, or whether it's, again, any type of resources online, having that sheet already created, or better yet, having your students actually create their own at times, will give them the opportunity to kind of really be able to help them determine, okay, what are true differences between fact, inference, and opinion? Because, again, it's a valid, important detail for them to understand the difference between those. They're pretty good at fact and opinion at the upper levels. They're not as good at inferencing. And you can do the same thing with, when you're doing virtual labs or hands-on labs. What are your observations? What are your inferences? Because they hear a lot of times about, whether it's talking about your carbon footprint or talking about, political information out there. There's lots of facts out. There's lots of things you can actually observe, but there's also lots of things that are being inferred, and having them, again, filter out that information as they go through. All right. One of my other things I like to do is when my students are watching a video, I like to have them go in and pull video vocabulary content. So as they're watching a video, in this case, this video probably will play for just a minute. I don't know if you'll see it on your screen or not. You won't hear the audio. And if I play the audio, it'll just get distracting in the background. But as they're watching a video, have them go through and pull out the key vocabulary components, because we may be talking about something in the classroom, and if I just show a video, even a short clip, I've noticed more and more students, we try to have those short 1-2 minute clips, but because student videos are using more and more in classrooms, they still, at times just tune it out. If there's an assignment or some kind of responsibility attached to it, they have to spend more time focusing in on it. So having them pull out the key vocabulary as they're watching a video. So we've got a couple people losing sound, so I'll hang on. And maybe because I have too much going on in the background. Hang on just a second.
It looks like maybe just Rachel lost sound.
Okay.
So Rachel, let us know if you can hear again.
Okay. So hopefully she'll get it back now that I've stopped the video playing. But my very favorite of all the ones I'm going to show tonight is this one right here. It's called a RAFT strategy. Now, RAFT stands for role, audience, format, and topic. It can work in a variety of areas, a variety of subject areas. This one happens to be science. But the idea behind it is, instead of just having our students summarize or write a report about something that we're studying right now, we're going to actually have them take the role of something, some person, something else. They're going to have to write it to a specific audience. They're going to have to use a specific format, and they're going to have a specific topic. Now, we could give them, like, this is a younger second, maybe third grade, even up to fourth grade, and we may give them the actual information. For older students, we may actually have them give them some choices around this. But the idea, let me show you the upper levels one as well. This is more for our middle school, high school folks. But the idea behind it, so let's take a look at one of these. the one on the cell. So there you can want to write from the point of view of the cell. Your audience is you're writing to new cells, and you're making an owner's manual. And the topic is my parts and how they function. So if they can go through, and the way I always talk to teachers about this is if they can go through and explain how their parts function as they're writing to an owner's manual, then they really understand the concept. It gives me an idea of how well they understand a specific topic, an idea, information, a concept, whatever it is we're talking about. And it's really easy. It's pretty engaging for the students as well. If you do a search online for RAFT strategies on just about anything out there, you'll find some that have been created already. So you don't have to go through and try to create these from scratch. I'm big on borrowing whatever it is people have already shared out on the internet. So again, you're looking for RAFT, RAFT, and then whatever it is you're studying. Will you find something for everything? No, but you'll find a lot of examples and some of those ideas, especially in the social studies, math areas you can actually do this with, that you can actually pull in as you go through. Oops. So here's another example from a social studies standpoint. So the neighbor of a Japanese-American family, your audience is an uncle in New York City, a friendly letter. What I think about the situation with the Japanese-Americans. So, you know, when you're dealing with World War II and the internment of the Japanese-Americans in California. So again, you'll find tons of them. Another fun one is called Save the Last Word. And the way to save the last word works is this. The setup for it is basically this. If you ever have a student in your classroom who's got to have the last word, I think we've all been there. I got to have the last word. They always want to have the last word. This is their audience, or their opportunity, to do that. And the way it works is this. So what we do is we give every student 3 index cards. And when they're watching a video, again, using any resource online, you can do this kind of activity with. But what they've got to do is put down 1 on each card. So they're going to have 3 of these. An interesting fact, detail, idea that they learned on the front of the card. So 1 on each card. They have 3 different things that they want to put down. 1 on each card. On the back of each card, they've got to put down why they found that information interesting, why they found it important, whatever it is that, you know, your rationale for why they put that information down. They've got to put that down. They then work in their team, and when they're sharing in their team, if it's my turn, let's say Jenny's in my group, I'm going to have an opportunity to share my first card. Jenny's going to have a chance to listen to what my favorite thing was. I can pick 1 of my 3, or depending on how much time you have, you can have them share all 3. This depends on your amount of time you want to allocate to this. But I'm going to pick my 1. Jenny's going to listen to mine. She's going to give me some feedback on what I said. But then I get the chance to say the last thing about my card. So everybody in that group will have a chance to have the last word about their own topic or own fact or detail that they want to share. So they all have the chance to have that last word. So again, kind of a fun little activity. Let me move to this one, and we'll mess with that one for right now. Another fun one is dealing with a think, pair, share, and a variety of ways to do this. The example I'm using here is we have an interactive glossary in the Discovery Education Science resources where there's an animation for every glossary term, which is I love because it's no audio to it. It just shows an animation of the concept. In this case, it's a carbon cycle, so you're seeing it playing in the background. And what I have my students do when we do this when we're looking at interactive glossary is, and I'm not going to give them a definition. I want them to watch the interactive glossary. There's no audio, it's just text and images, and create their own definition for what's the carbon cycle based on what they're seeing here. Then they pair up with a partner and they compare their ideas together. I then have them, slight modification, collaborate to come up with a firm final definition for their pair to share out. Then they'll get an opportunity to share to the whole class what their definition is of the carbon cycle. The key caveat, though, is they've got to provide supporting information from what they've seen in this interactive animation. Or if I'm watching a video, again, they've got to make references back to the video. If they've done a reading passage, sharing it back with that. So whatever the resource is, they've got to make connections to what else they've seen, what else they're using. So again, a simple thing for when you're doing with problem solving. So when you're doing in the math areas, what is the information you need to solve the problem? What do you already know? What tools, strategies can you use? So then the pairing up, jot down ideas to get you started with the problem, sharing ideas to the larger group about how you're going to solve this problem. And this is great when you're first trying to learn a new math concept, is what is it do I have to know? And especially when you're dealing with word problems that are multi-step, it's a great strategy to have so that I can kind of apply this to other areas. And, work out a plan, share the plan with the class, listen to other ideas, and they may think, you know what, Jenny's got a better idea than I had on how to do this. So I'm going to modify my plan because of what Jenny added on here, because I didn't think about this part. And so it gets them to start to understand that, first off, I'm going to think through the process with a partner and kind of think through how it works. But then also they realize that I don't always have to have all the answers. I'm, collaborating and working with others helps me get a better informed bit of information and find new ways to solve problems. So another fun one is a semantic feature analysis. And this, what you're doing here is having your students kind of, going through and kind of compare the similarities and differences between different, literacy components. So if you're doing just straight literacy, maybe you're having your students read the Rough-Faced Girl folktale, and maybe you're having them watch 2 myths that are videos on Discovery Education. And so what we want to have them do is compare what things do they have in similarity, which ones are vastly different. So they can kind of see how folktales and myths are similar and how they're different. So having that semantic feature analysis helps kind of make the connections between different tales, different misinformation. Really helpful and really kind of neat when you can have 2 kind of myths or folktales that have the same basic meaning or ultimate, point being made across the tale itself. But they're done in an entirely different way. So they can see how the same bit of information or the same moral is being expressed in a variety of means. And then you can do the same thing with social studies and see how things are connected that way. This one's fun because when you're doing it with around the different presidents, what you're looking at is you can see what things happened as a result based on, Democrat versus Republican, wartime versus non-wartime with the Congresses in the same party. And then as they're making these connections, start to see, okay, what policies were put in place as a result of this? Is there a connection between why JFK was not reelected? Well, obviously we know why he wasn't reelected. But if you do it more of a longitudinal study, you can get a better understanding of it. Getting down toward the nitty-gritty, and the last couple of them, another one that's great is, in case you're not aware, and I love doing this with everybody because it's just so important for people to understand, is I'm going to go into one of our video segments. I'm just going to do a search, just like I'm doing a search for streaming real quick. And Jenny, can you see my Discovery Education browser?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so I'm going to do a search real quickly for, let's do something simple. We'll do plants. And anytime you're doing a search for video content, one thing to be aware of, and a lot of you are probably already aware, but just in case you're not, down here on the left it says video detail. And one of the things under that is editable. So if you find clips that are editable, you can put these in tons of our content, whether you're in streaming or science textbook or wherever you are. You have tons of video that are editable. I'm going to go into a video segment to narrow me down just a little bit because I don't want a 30-minute video in here. Bear with me for a second. So I'll just grab this one right here, a little video segment, just to open it up and let you see where you can tell if it's editable or not. So down the bottom left-hand side, you should see the word edit. That means that video is editable. Now, if you did your search filter with editable, you'll know it's editable. So what you can do with this is if you're on a Mac, you've got a program called iMovie. And don't worry, if you're not a Mac person, I've got a solution for you as well. iMovie is a free program that's already part of your Mac computer. If you're on a PC, you've got a program called Windows Movie Maker. They're both free video editing programs. And what you can do with that is you can actually have your students take our video content and then have them write out and explain, okay, what is it that I want to teach or tell about what I've learned on this. Then they can record. All they need to do record over our video is, in an iMovie or Mac, you can take our narrator out, and you can actually, and just plug in a microphone to a desktop computer. If you have a laptop, microphones are built in. There's no need to buy an expensive microphone to do this. A lot of schools already have microphones, but if you don't have one in your school, buy a $6 or $7 microphone from Walmart, because the difference between a $6 microphone at Walmart and a $30 microphone at Best Buy is about 24 bucks. Otherwise, there is no difference. But what we can do is have our students actually express, not necessarily just in writing, but vocally and verbally, what is it that I've learned about this concept, whether it's plants or whatever it happens to be. And that's another way for them to express what their understanding is, because speaking is another key component of being literate in today's world. Can I express myself orally? Can I express my ideas and what the information I want to share with other individuals? So having them go through that process is a powerful, powerful tool. Not every student's going to be comfortable standing up in front of the classroom. They don't have to. You can have them just literally go through and do the whole recording over our narration. And again, you're not violating any copyright laws because we've paid for the editable rights on these.
And Brad, if I can jump in for just a second,
yep,
I think this one is so important, because if you have students that are struggling with their ability to read with expression, if they can listen to themselves, they really understand what they actually sound like, and they'll re-record, and I need to read with more expression. So it's a really powerful way for them to be able to listen to themselves and re-record and practice that skill, and it also really helps their fluency.
That's a great point, Jenny.
Well.
Yeah, it's really powerful to see that, and it's amazing to watch students change as they do listen to themselves and listen to other student peers, and hearing another peer do it with more expression than they do, and they're like, oh, I want to do that better. And they'll get better quickly on it. And again, you don't have to be the expert on Movie Maker or iMovie. If you're at third grade or above, you can have a student who will learn it in a heartbeat on you and teach you how to do it. So don't feel like you've got to be an expert on this. They'll figure out most of it before you will. Don't take offense to it. They're just wired that way. I'm a geeky person. They still learn it quicker than I do. So it's a good strategy. The last one I'll get into is, and I won't go spend much time on this because we're almost out of time, but QR codes is another great little tool to use. And I like to use this one because it, again, makes a connection between a digital content and the reading material. So let's say you have a textbook, or you have Time for Kids magazines in your classroom, or National Geographic Kids, or any periodical out there. You can actually take one of the resources from Discovery Education. So let me go back to my little website here for Discovery. And you'll notice right underneath this video, there's something called Share. And you get a link to that resource. That link will take any student or anybody straight to this video segment. So let's say I have an article about duck-billed platypus, and I want my students to learn more about it, because that article in that National Geographic for Kids or Time for Kids magazine is really just a paragraph. I want them to get a better understanding of that, or give them the opportunity to explore more if they want to. You can do the same thing with a reading literacy book when they're talking about, a specific part, like maybe you're reading Maniac McGee and they're talking about parts of New York City. You can put that in there as well. But what they do is when they scan that QR code, and if you've got a document camera or a webcam on your computer, it'll scan there as well. If you've got a smartphone, it'll work. If you've got an iPad, it'll work. There's a variety of ways to use it. You can do QR code generators. There's tons of them out there. I'll put a couple of them in here. On the chat window real quick, Kiowa is one. GOO.GL is another one. And bit.ly. I see someone lost sound. Hopefully it'll come back in just a second, Robin. But all of those are QR code generators. And all you got to do is paste the link from our resource into the generator, and it'll create the image that looks like, whoops, sorry, here. Where'd it go? Oh, come on now. Sorry. It looks like that. It'll create that little QR code, what that's called, and if a kid scans it, it'll take them straight to the resource. So you have access, students, when they've scanned those, or take that magazine up to the computer and scan it on your webcam, it'll take them straight into the resource so they can learn more about that bit of information, that animal, that period in history, that author, whatever it happens to be. And again, we'd love you to link it to the Discovery Education, but you can put any URL in there. If you want to go to Wikipedia so students learn more about Shakespeare, do it. Let them link to anywhere. So hopefully that lifted a little bit of the fog on kind of ways to connect literacy and digital media. Hopefully this was useful for you guys and a good use of your time tonight. And as I mentioned to Jenny, she's going to share out the information, share out the URL for the recorded version, and she's going to share a link for this PowerPoint. She's got access to my PowerPoint. Feel free to use it. Share it with other individuals out there, modify it. All I ask is if you want to use it, take my name off of it, put your name on it. It doesn't bother me at all. Hopefully this was good. I appreciate your time tonight. And thank you, Jenny, for helping to moderate and handle any troubleshooting issues. I appreciate it.